All right, so today we're diving into a quiet but massive revolution that's happening in workplaces everywhere. There's a new kind of manager showing up, and this one, well, it never sleeps, it never takes a break, and it sees everything. We're talking about the rise of the invisible manager. Okay, let's just kick things off with a number that is kind of staggering. Over 40%. A report for the European Parliament found that more than 40% of workers in the EU are already being managed in some way by an algorithm. Just let that sink in for a second. That's nearly half the workforce getting their tasks, their performance reviews, you name it, from a computer program. And look, if you're thinking, oh, this is just about gig workers, right? Like delivery drivers, think again. Nope, these systems are spreading, and fast. We're seeing them in traditional jobs now, finance, transportation, even manufacturing. They're assigning who does what, watching how well they do it, and sometimes even deciding when they work. So why is this happening so quickly? What's the big push? Well, the bottom line is efficiency, a relentless drive for it. Companies are bringing in AI to slash the costs of having human supervisors, to squeeze every last drop of productivity out of the workday, and, to get rid of what they see as messy human feelings in management. But this is so much bigger than just efficiency. It's completely shaking up the power dynamic at work and raising some really tough questions about what's fair and who's really in control. Okay, so let's get on the same page. What exactly is algorithmic management? Let's break it down. The OECD has a pretty simple way of putting it. Algorithmic management, or AM for short, is basically when you use technology, and yeah, that includes AI, to do the jobs a human manager used to do. We're talking about everything from telling people what to do, to checking their work, to giving them a performance review. And this really brings that idea to life. So, for example, in the world of finance, it might be all about constantly monitoring performance. In transportation, it's about figuring out the most efficient way to assign tasks. And in industry, it can even be used to set work schedules. So yeah, this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's a whole toolbox of different systems for all kinds of different jobs. All right, so that's the what. Now let's dig into the why. What's the big promise here? Why are so many companies jumping on this bandwagon? From a business perspective, you can see why it's so tempting. The main goal? Supercharge efficiency. Automate all that routine management stuff. Optimize every schedule. Cut down on the costs of paying human supervisors, and, this is a big one, take human bias out of the equation. The idea is that a computer, running on pure data, will be fairer than a person. But, as we're about to find out, that is a huge if. And check this out. This map really shows you just how widespread this trend is, but also how uneven it is. I mean, look at Denmark. A whopping 70% of workers are dealing with this. But then you go down to Portugal, and it's way, way lower. And that tells you something really important. This isn't just about who has the best tech. It's about local culture, labor laws, and how powerful the unions are. But of course, this all-out sprint for efficiency, it comes at a price. So now we have to flip the coin and look at the other side, the real human cost of having a machine for a boss. And yeah, the list of potential problems is long and pretty serious. Studies are connecting this kind of management to heavier workloads and just insane time pressure. Workers say they have way less freedom, less control over their own work. And then there's the mental toll of being watched all the time, right? The way it bleeds into your personal life. There's even a risk of losing your skills because the algorithm is making all the interesting decisions for you. All of this, it's basically a recipe for stress and ultimately burnout. Researchers actually have a pretty powerful name for this whole phenomenon: digital Taylorism. Now, that's a callback to this old idea from the early 1900s called scientific management. The whole point was to break down every single human action into tiny, hyper-efficient pieces to get the most output. But now with AI, that level of control is just amplified. It's no wonder some people are calling it Taylorism on steroids. And what's fascinating? It isn't just the workers who are worried. Check out these numbers. Even the managers putting these systems in place have some major doubts. Their top 3 concerns are basically tied. First, who's actually accountable? If the algorithm messes up, who takes the blame? Second, you can't always explain why it made a certain decision, that classic black box problem. And third, they're worried these tools just aren't doing enough to protect people's health and well-being. So with all these concerns piling up, we're starting to see a pushback. A real counter-movement is forming. Policymakers, unions, and workers are all starting to say the same thing. We need to keep a human in the loop. So how are they trying to do that?
Well, a big reason for this push is a huge disconnect between what managers think is happening and what's actually happening. On one side, you have managers who assume, yeah, of course my employees know they're being monitored by an algorithm. But then you look at surveys of the actual workers and nope, a lot of them have no idea. That gap in awareness is a massive issue.
So in response, you have bodies like European Parliament stepping in. They're pushing for new rules to protect people. And the core demands are pretty clear. First, they want guaranteed human oversight for all the big calls. We're talking hiring, firing, promotions. Second, they're demanding a worker's right to an explanation, to finally crack open that black box. Also the right to say, hey, I want a human to review this decision. And finally, a straight-up ban on using this tech to snoop on people's private emotions or personal data. And all of this, really, it brings us to the biggest question of all, the one that's at the very heart of this huge technological shift. It's all about governance, responsibility, and ultimately power. So think about it. When an algorithm, a piece of code designed for nothing but pure efficiency, makes a bad call that hurts a real person, who's responsible? Is it the developer who wrote the code, the company that bought and used the system, or maybe it's the human manager who was supposed to be watching over it? As we hand over more and more of our authority to these invisible managers, that is the question we all, sooner or later, are going to have to answer.